Something interesting happened in the world of defense acquisitions in 2020. The new defense acquisition procedure, you can think of it as the Bible of defense acquisitions, gave India's forces the option to lease equipment. Platforms like transport fleet, trainers, simulators, and machinery that is needed for search and rescue operations got the nod. The armed forces, struggling with budgetary constraints and operational gaps, jumped at the opportunity. The Navy, in fact, wasted no time and inducted 2 high-altitude, long-endurance drones, the Sea Guardians, on lease from an American company for 2 years. In the history of India's defense, no equipment had ever been acquired so quickly. It happened in just 2 months. The Navy then followed it up with a request for utility helicopters for its warships, again on lease. They wanted it for 2 years. The Navy has been desperately trying to retire its vintage Chetak fleet, but its plans to acquire 111 such choppers is yet to float. So leasing was the best option to meet the immediate critical requirement. The process may take a little more time than the drones because there are multiple players here involved. The Navy already operates the nuclear attack submarine INS Chakra that is on lease from the Russians. Not to be outdone, the Indian Air Force flew right into the lease game as well. Faced with an acute shortage of basic trainer aircraft for training their pilots, it has sent out a request for information to global vendors. The makers of the current fleet of Pilatus basic trainers are banned in India because of a corruption scandal. So plans to buy it from them went kaput. The trainers that HAL is making, HTT-40, will take another 3 to 4 years to come. So leasing is the only option right now. It's quick, but not always cheap. The other critical shortage that the Indian Air Force is looking to fix by way of leasing is mid-air refuelers. It operates 6 Russian origin tankers that came in 2003 and are facing maintenance and serviceability issues. The Indian Air Force has been trying to procure 6 new ones for the last 14 years. But that hasn't happened because, well, paisa nahi hai. So buzz is that the Indian Air Force wants to lease at least 3. Now, interestingly, the Indian Air Force chief says that leasing has nothing to do with budgetary constraints, but is the evolution of the procurement process. To some extent, that may be true. Take, for example, the mid-air refuelers. Hypothetically, it gives the Indian Air Force the chance to try out both the Boeing and the Airbus refuelers it is interested in via lease before actually deciding which one to buy. India, in fact, is fairly happy with the drones it leased from General Atomic and is going in for the purchase of 30 armed drones to boost its sea and land defenses. So leasing does 3 things essentially. A, when money is tight, it helps tide over operational gaps. If you cannot buy, lease. Also, buying may not always be a good idea, especially when you need something for only a limited time. And C, leasing also helps circumvent the long and complex beast that is defense procurement. Just to put things in perspective, it took us 10 years to buy the Rafale. Again, we are not the only country leasing defense equipment. Even rich countries like the United Kingdom, Italy, Denmark and Norway have leased aircraft for their Air Force and the Navy. But is leasing really a win-win situation for the Indian Armed Forces? There is another side to the argument as well. Gargi Kaul, who retired as the Secretary Defense Finance, says that in her experience, leasing always turns out to be more expensive than outright purchase if we factor in maintenance and insurance clause as well. So while it is okay to lease very expensive, high-end, costly military equipment, it is not feasible to lease transport aircraft or vehicles. So the question that now confronts the Indian Armed Forces is, to lease or not to lease?